conference. My name is Mia Rabson, and I'm a reporter with the Canadian Press, and I will be helping moderate this morning's press conference. My understanding is that both the Immigration Minister, Sean Fraser, and Defence Minister, Anita Anand, will have opening statements, and then they will be able to take your questions. If you have a question, please use the raise hand function on Zoom, and I will pass the floor over to whichever minister wants to start.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone who's joining us here in the room. Bon matin tout le monde. I'm joined today here with my friend and colleague, the Honourable Anita Anand, the Minister of National Defence, who will provide a brief opening statement, and we'll both be happy to take what questions you may have afterwards. We are here to provide a bit of an update on the situation in Sudan. Allow me first to reiterate that the Government of Canada condemns the ongoing violence in Sudan and is deeply concerned for the safety and well-being of people in the area, including Canadian citizens and permanent residents. My department is working closely with Global Affairs Canada and National Defence, as well as other government departments, to monitor the situation as it evolves and prepare for various scenarios. When responding to international crises, we do our best to tailor each response to meet the unique needs of those who require our support. Lorsqu'on répond à des crises internationales, le Canada adapte chaque réponse pour subvenir aux besoins particuliers des personnes qui nécessitent notre soutien. Earlier this week, I announced the Government of Canada will introduce new immigration measures to support Sudanese temporary residents who are in Canada now and may not be able to return home due to the rapidly deteriorating situation in their country. I want to confirm now that these measures will come into effect tomorrow. As of tomorrow, April 30th, Sudanese nationals will be able to apply for an extension to their status in Canada and move between various temporary streams, allowing them to continue studying, working, or visiting family free of charge. The details will be posted on IRCC's website as of tomorrow when the applications become live. À partir de demain, les ressortissants soudanais pourront demander gratuitement les prolongations de leur statut au Canada et changer des catégories temporaires pour leur permettre de continuer d'étudier, de travailler et d'être auprès de leur famille. Des détails seront bientôt disponibles sur le site web d'IRCC dès demain. These measures are going to help ensure the continued safety of the Sudanese population who are already in Canada, helping keep families together and give them a safe place to stay, as well as the peace of mind knowing that they'll be able to remain in Canada. In addition to supporting efforts on assisted departures from the area, we're also waiving passport and travel document fees for citizens and permanent residents of Canada in Sudan and prioritizing completed applications already in our system for temporary and permanent residents from applicants in Sudan for when it is safe to travel. We're going to continue to work with partners to facilitate processing while we monitor the situation and explore various immigration options going forward. In the past week, we have processed all 50 proof of citizenship applications received from Canadian citizens residing in Sudan, and we're prepared to act quickly and efficiently as new urgent applications may arise given the situation. In addition, 85 of the 154 temporary residence extensions were finalized as of this past Thursday, ensuring safety to Sudanese foreign nationals already in Canada. Au cours de la dernière semaine, nous avons traité les 50 demandes de preuve de citoyenneté reçues des citoyens canadiens résidant au Soudan et nous sommes prêts à agir rapidement et efficacement à mesure que de nouvelles demandes urgentes nous arriveront. De plus, 85 prolongations de résidence temporaire sur 154 ont été traitées en date de jeudi 27 avril, assurant la sécurité des ressortissants étrangers soudanais déjà au Canada. We have now deployed additional officers to the region to help those who are already on the ground with immigration-related operations. To ensure that those in need receive timely assistance and support, IRCC continues to work to assist the evacuation efforts by ensuring 24/7 coverage to support clients and officers on the ground. IRCC a déployé des agents supplémentaires dans la région pour aider ceux qui sont déjà sur le terrain avec des opérations liées à l'immigration. Pour s'assurer que les personnes dans les besoins reçoivent une aide et un soutien en temps opportun, IRCC travaille sans relâche pour aider les efforts d'évacuation en assurant une couverture 24 heures sur 7 jours par semaine pour soutenir les clients et les agents sur le terrain. We've got a proud and long-standing tradition in this country of providing protection to vulnerable people around the world. We're going to continue to monitor the situation as it evolves and work to support those who are seeking safety in Canada. Nous continuerons de surveiller la situation de près et travaillerons pour fournir un soutien à ceux qui cherchent la sécurité au Canada. I'd now like to pass the microphone over to my honourable colleague, Minister of National Defence, Anita Anand, after which we'll be prepared to take what questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sean. Good morning. I'm here to provide an update on Canada's efforts to evacuate citizens and other affected persons from Sudan. Canada continues to work with the international community to coordinate a response to the crisis, to support the people of Sudan, and to reach a negotiated settlement that returns Sudan to lasting peace and democracy. Canada welcomes the extended ceasefire agreement et nous reconnaissons également que la situation sur le terrain reste volatile, précaire et imprévisible. Cette situation a une incidence sur tous les efforts d'évacuation, mais le Canada et ses alliés poursuivront leur opération tant que la situation le permettra. As the security situation in Sudan continues to worsen, the Government of Canada is taking action to bring Canadians and their dependents to safety. As I've previously mentioned, the Canadian Armed Forces have pre-positioned Army, Navy, Air Force, and Special Operations Forces into the region for several days. All those forces remain in the region. Let me now provide an update on Canada's evacuation flights. Yesterday, on April 28th, 2 evacuation flights departed Sudan. They carried approximately 221 people, including 68 Canadians and 6 permanent residents. This is in addition to the flights that we conducted on April 27th, when we conducted 2 evacuations on CC-130 Hercules aircraft and successfully extracted 117 individuals, including 42 Canadians, to Djibouti. As of yesterday, over 375 Canadians have been evacuated, including flights on Allied aircraft. I can confirm that at least 1 Canadian evacuation flight is planned for today. Je peux confirmer qu'au moins un vol d'évacuation canadien est prévu pour aujourd'hui. The window for opportunity at the airfield is closing. And so we continue to examine a number of options to evacuate Canadians, including through maritime assets and overground transport. Nous continuons à travailler en étroite collaboration avec nos alliés et nos partenaires pour assurer la sécurité des Canadiens. Environ 200 membres des forces armées canadiennes restent déployés dans la région pour cette ligne d'effort et nous continuerons à évacuer des Canadiens aussi longtemps que les conditions le permettront, selon les besoins. Les forces armées canadiennes ont actuellement 2 avions Hercules, un avion Globemaster et un avion Polaris pour soutenir la mission. Ces avions effectuent des vols d'évacuation et déplacent le personnel des forces armées canadiennes dans la région. The Canadian Armed Forces currently have 2 CC-130 Hercules aircraft, 1 C-177 Globemaster, and 1 CC-150 Polaris supporting the mission. These aircraft are conducting evacuation flights, as well as moving Canadian Armed Forces personnel around in the region. As the situation continues to evolve, we are exploring options for both air evacuation as well as ground and seaport extraction options, especially at Port Sudan. HMCS Montreal and MV Asterix, previously on Operation Projection, on their way to the Indo-Pacific, have been retasked to remain in the vicinity of the Port of Sudan should they become of use to the evacuation efforts. We have been extracting citizens for our allies as well, and refueling Allied ships. Our allies have expressed their gratitude to Canada for the contribution. I want to say once again that the members of the Canadian Armed Forces will continue to be there for people in their time of need, and Canada and our allies are here to support the people of Sudan in calling for an end to this violence. Je tiens a répété que les membres des forces armées canadiennes continueront à être là pour les personnes dans le besoin et que le Canada et ses alliés sont là pour soutenir le peuple soudanais dans son appel à mettre fin à cette violence. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, ministers. I now invite reporters in the Zoom to use the raise hand function if you have a question. We'll start with one question and one follow, and we will begin with Mackenzie Gray.
Good morning. My questions are for the Defense Minister. Minister, you mentioned that the window is closing for being able to airlift people out. Can you just give us what your estimated timeline is for what that window is and kind of explain why you think that window is closing?
Thank you, Mackenzie. Great to hear from you. So first, we're going to continue flights as long as possible. But I will say that the situation is dynamic and we need to continue to evaluate the situation and ensure that the conditions remain safe to have continued air extractions at Wadi Sedna. We have one flight planned for today at least. We are continuing to keep people updated. And I will say that we are examining all options. We do have assets in the port of Sudan, and we are continually in discussions with our allies so that we have multiple options on the table, as I mentioned in my remarks. Thank you.
A bit of a global affairs question, but hoping both of you, or either one of you might have some answers, but do you just have an update on the number of Canadians who've registered who are in the area? And I'd say more importantly, how many Canadians have asked to be evacuated who still need to be evacuated?
Okay. Thanks again for the question. So Global Affairs Canada is in touch with Canadians. They're reaching out to all Canadians who need help, continuously monitoring the numbers, of course. And we are seeing that the numbers are decreasing, especially given that now we have over 375 Canadians who have been evacuated. In terms of the specific numbers, right this moment, they are continually changing as we are seeing both allied and our own efforts being useful to Canadians in terms of evacuations, but we still have approximately over 300 Canadians who are seeking assistance as of yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be Christian Paslang from the CBC.
Hi, thanks. Given that the window is closing for air evacuations, what would the government recommend people who are still stuck do to make their way to a place that they may be able to benefit from an evacuation? Is the situation that they should make their way to Port Sudan or overland? Is there any guidance from the government in that respect?
We have a number of Canadians at the airport who are seeking evacuation, which is why we have the flight, at least one, planned for today. In terms of the current advice that is being given to Canadians, that is being provided directly to Canadians through Global Affairs Canada. And I will say that it is evolving frequently. And I would reiterate the advice to follow Global Affairs closely, to ensure you're registered with Global Affairs, and to be in touch with Global Affairs routinely because of the evolving situation on the ground, especially in terms of the fighting that is moving closer to the Wadi Sedna airport. Thank you.
And just to follow up, for those Canadians waiting in the airport or elsewhere in Sudan for evacuation, is Canada able to provide them with, the basic needs, food, water, things like that, given the precariousness of the situation?
Right now, we have Global Affairs Canada reaching out to all Canadians in terms of trying to assist them with their needs. For example, we have Global Affairs Canada representatives at the airport. We are also working with our allies to ensure that Canadians have what they need insofar as we are able to provide it. The key issue for defense and the Department of National Defense is to provide the assets and personnel support to coordinate the evacuations. And I will say for our part, what we are doing is working with our allies at all times to ensure that our risk assessment is akin to theirs and that we are able to assist the evacuation of their citizens as they are assisting with the evacuation of ours. So it's a very knitted up operation with our allies, and that is why we are very careful to ensure that we are examining all options regardless of the place, to make sure that we are supporting Canadians as best we can during, as you called it, a very precarious situation. And you're exactly right. It's precarious, it's volatile and dangerous. And that's why we are examining all options and helping Canadians with current needs to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Kieran Green from the Canadian Press.
Hi there, Minister Anand. Thank you very much for your time. A Sudanese Canadian that we spoke with this week was evacuated out of Khartoum on a Durban flight on Monday. She said that she was, however, disappointed by the time required of Canada's own evacuations. She referenced other geographically distant countries like South Korea and the UK that have been able to evacuate thousands of their nationals already. I was wondering how Global Affairs or how you would respond to that criticism. And if you could elaborate on challenges for timeliness that have been in place for our country.
We have been monitoring the situation daily and making sure that we have assets and personnel on the ground. The conditions on the ground remain extremely volatile, but what we are doing from a Canadian Armed Forces perspective is working in lockstep with our allies and with our partners to ensure that we are present in the region. That's why we've deployed 200 Canadian Armed Forces members, including Special Forces personnel, including assets such as the CC-130s and ships in the port of Sudan. The confidence that I have in the Canadian Armed Forces and their ability to work closely with our allies and extract Canadians is high. That is because I have seen the Canadian Armed Forces work very well and systematically in high pressure situations. The Canadian Armed Forces will continue to do their utmost, and I'd like to thank the Canadian Armed Forces for their work continually, day and night, to ensure that Canadians are brought to safety. I will reiterate that over 375 Canadians have been evacuated to date, and we are continuing to work on contingency plans to extract Canadians as the conditions on the ground permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I was wondering if you could elaborate as well on the ground evacuation options that you mentioned. You spoke a little bit in detail about the maritime evacuation potential, but I was hoping you could elaborate on any exploration of ground evacuation that's being done.
I am not able to provide precise details relating to Canadian planning on the various options. I will come back to you when we have ascertained additional options. I will say we are following closely what our allies are doing. For example, the United States did execute a convoy yesterday, and that is the type of initiative that we are tracking, and we are doing so because we see the window of opportunity at the Wadi Sedna airport rapidly deteriorating given the fighting that is moving closer and closer to that locale. It is a dynamic situation, and it requires us to track it closely and make decisions in the best interests of Canadians for their safety and security. And that's exactly what we're doing in terms of addressing all options. Again, we're working very closely with our allies on this planning and on the risk analysis at the specific locales, including the airport and the Port of Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a bit of time for a few more questions if people want to jump in again. But while I wait for that, I'm going to ask my own question. I'm curious, Minister Anand, if you could answer what we know more about the flight from Turkey, or the Turkish flight that was shot at, and what additional concerns that raised for Canada in all of these operations.
We know that the Turkish flight was fired upon by ground fire. Neither side is claiming responsibility for that ground fire. The ground fire caused a temporary pause in flights leaving the Wadi Sedna airport. And again, we are examining the situation at the airport, including the firing upon of the Turkish airline, closely with our allies. But I want to reiterate, after that occurred, we were able to ensure that 2 Canadian flights departed the airport yesterday. And once again, we will do our utmost to ensure that Canadians are able to be evacuated and protect their safety and security while we're doing so. Thank you.
Thank you. And this might be a question for both of you, but you mentioned that there were 221 people on board, of whom about 74 were Canadians and permanent residents. Do we know how many more on that flight were relatives of those Canadians and permanent residents that would also maybe be seeking to come to Canada? And for Minister Fraser, what are we doing to help those family members who aren't Canadians get the paperwork to come here?
Happy to address the second portion of your question. I don't have the precise figure in terms of the number of family members on the flight. We'd be happy to follow up afterwards. From the beginning of this initiative, we had directed our department to be prepared to expedite the processing of any travel documents required, not only for Canadian citizens and permanent residents, but also the family members who may come. In addition, we have offered the same level of service to our locally engaged staff who may not be Canadian and their families as well, who will be eligible to have their travel documents processed to allow them to escape the situation. As the numbers come in, happy to provide updates over the next few days, because I expect as the situation evolves, we're going to continue to see more interest for those who are eligible to take part in this initiative to have the necessary travel documentation issued.
I do apologize for the interruption. This is the conferencing agent. I was advised that the last question was to be taken. Désolé de l'interruption. Ici l'agent de téléconférence. On m'a dit que le temps est à la dernière question. Sorry for the interruption. Désolé. Je vous laisse. I'm leaving the conference.
Okay, I guess that ends today's press conference. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.